Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey, and today, very excited, we're being joined by Cheryl C.D. Hughes, historian and author of Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen, Convert Maker. Now, Venerable Fulton Sheen, an Emmy-winning televangelist and radio pioneer, led countless souls to the church with his wit and wisdom in post-war America. And Cheryl's book explores his remarkable conversions and legacy. It's so cool. Good morning, Cheryl.
Good morning.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. Now, you're able to bring to life Fulton Sheen's extraordinary ability to draw millions to the Catholic faith in that post-war America. So what was the secret sauce that made him such a powerful evangelizer?
One of the first little bits of advice he'd gotten in college from his debate teacher was to be natural. And I think he seemed so natural to people, especially when he was on television, that he was actually coming into their homes to visit with them. He never talked down to an audience. He was very respectful of everybody, including children, whom he adored. But I think it's that naturalness, because it seems so, he presents himself almost in a folksy way, but that's really just to win over the audience and let them know that he is with them and for them and would do anything for them. So I think that's his touch. He just has that common touch that so few people really have, but he had it in spades.
Oh, so true. I remember the first time I started watching his television show, and I was immediately struck by his almost, I don't want to call it theatrical tone, but then like him being so natural was really what kept me watching. But he influenced the conversions of so many fascinating figures. I'm curious to know, Cheryl, who was the most interesting or most high-profile conversion that you found in your research?
I think the most highest profile conversion is Claire Booth Luce. She at the time was second only to Eleanor Roosevelt in the country as the most recognized and admired women. She was a playwright. She wrote screenplays for some of her works. She wrote novels, short stories. She also was a two-term congresswoman from Connecticut. And she was beautiful and wealthy, and she was married to Henry Luce, who owned Time Incorporated. So together, the two of them really were the power couple of mid-century America. So it was just really a Renaissance woman. She did so many things, and she did them all brilliantly. She was even an ambassador to Italy.
Wow. Yeah, he definitely had quite the influence with many people, including celebrities and like you mentioned, just some high-profile figures. The book delves into Sheen's lifelong struggle with vanity and ambition, as well as his mistreatment by Cardinal Spellman. How would you say these challenges shaped his priesthood, and what do they tell us about his journey toward holiness?
I think they illustrate his humility. Despite his great pride, he was extremely humble. It's hard not to be somewhat vain. He was vain to begin with, but I think as he got into his worldwide missions and he saw all those people that were just so close to poverty and death and disease and everything. He one time received a telegram asking him to send $200,000 immediately because the children in Pakistan were eating sand.
Wow.
So he just, he was so influential in that way.
Huh. Yeah, there's a lot of things that I did not know about Bishop Sheen. For instance, I didn't know he befriended a young Carol Wojtyła at the Second Vatican Council. How did this relationship come about?
Well, it came about, I think, largely from Vatican II. I think they became acquainted at Vatican II and became close friends. And of course, the Pope was younger than Sheen, but he John Paul II partially learned to speak English by listening to Sheen's tapes.
Wow.
So they were quite close. They wrote really charming letters to one another at various, inflection points in their lives. Um, so it was actually through Wojtyla, who was coming from Krakow, that he tried to get the church to change the definition of mission territory to wherever it was needed. That didn't happen. He didn't think it should be geographical. It should just be where the need was. And the need that John Paul II brought to him at the Vatican Council was the need for seminaries.
Mm.
They couldn't afford seminaries. They were still under the thumb of the Soviet bloc, and he wanted to help them. So, at any rate, he formed good friendships wherever he went.
Yeah, I can only imagine the conversations that the two of them had together because, Pope John Paul II, St. Pope John Paul II, his background was in theater. So I'm sure they had some great conversations. Speaking of saints, with his cause for canonization ongoing, I'm curious, why has Fulton Sheen's his canonization been held up?
Well, we got right down to the wire practically, just days away from his beatification, and there was an allegation that came out of the Diocese of Rochester, where he had been the ordinary for 3 short years. And nobody really knows what that is because they're not letting on. I think most people think it has something to do with the sexual abuse that priests might have been perpetrating while he was there, that maybe he didn't do enough. One of these things, how could you possibly do enough? So we do not know. Every bishop I have asked said that really it's not the Vatican at this point that's holding it up. It's the American bishops. And they're not holding it up, but, bishops are naturally territorial. And there are many, many, many saints' causes out there from various dioceses around the United States. And so it's almost impossible for them to get united around one of them. But I certainly hope that Sheen will press on through. He's had a miracle, after all, and it's been an approved miracle. So I would think that God does not give miracles to people who are seriously sinful.
Yeah, I would agree with that. What was the miracle? Do you know by chance?
Yes, the miracle was fascinating. It was a baby that was born, stillborn. It was not breathing. It was not breathing. And they, put the baby over on a table because it was dead and tended to the mother. And after just a little bit more than an hour, the baby started crying. In the meantime, its parents had been praying for the intercession of Fulton Sheen. And so that little baby came to life, and the doctor said, well, his poor brain has just been deprived of oxygen for so long, he's going to be multiply handicapped. But even that's not true. He's a perfect little boy today and full of life and fun.
Wow, that's so cool. It's so cool to share. Do you have any practical lessons for our listeners out there from Sheen's life that we can apply to share the faith in our increasingly secular world today?
Well, I think he was never shy about sharing the faith. He took every opportunity that he could have. And if you were sitting next to him on an airplane, if you weren't Catholic by the end of the flight, there was something wrong with you. So I think what we learn from Sheen is to be bold in being Catholic. Be bold and talk to people. Yeah, be bold. He was very bold. And say, well, why do you want to talk to me? Well, I want to talk to you about your soul. Well, how many people start that out with a conversation? I mean, it's just pretty amazing to me. And I'm not sure that any of us could be as bold as he. But on the other hand, it worked miracles for him, and it could work miracles for us.
Amen. So with just a minute or so left here, Cheryl, you did a lot of research for this book on Archbishop Sheen here, but what's one moment, or maybe it's a quote from his ministry that has really stayed with you personally, and how has his writings, how has writing this book deepened your own faith?
Well, it certainly has, because I just got to spend every day with the saint. thinking about him and writing about him and researching him. I love that he said, this is probably going to be a paraphrase, unless we're saving souls, nothing is saved. He was very, very intent upon saving souls. And I think one of the things that he didn't like about being the Bishop of Rochester was that he was so busy doing pastoral things in his diocese that he didn't have time to do the kinds of proselytizing and convert making that he had done before that. They say he has made 42,000 converts. I actually sort of, when he said he was getting 50 a day as an average, that far exceeds actually 42,000.
And now today we have books like yours, and then social media and like YouTube that are refreshing the new generations with his material. I can't imagine that it's probably even more now today, more than ever before. Wow. Cheryl, thank you so much for joining us this morning. For those out there, we're talking about Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen, Convert Maker. That's Cheryl's book. You can find it on Ignatius Press. We've got all the links in the show notes for those if you want to see and check out that book. And also remember, one of our listeners will win Cheryl's book on Monday. So make sure to play the trivia game for free this week. It's at grnonline.com/joy. But Cheryl, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, God love you. Thank you so very much for having me.
Absolutely. God bless. And that is it for Morning Joy, where truth matters. Now, for those out there listening in on the radio, we invite you to our after show clubhouse. We always say it, there's so much more to say, and we just have very little time to say it on radio. So we extend the conversation on over to the social media platforms. So YouTube, Rumble, Instagram, TikTok. The list continues to grow, but just search Morning Joy Radio or GRN online and you'll find us. So that's what we're doing. But if you're listening to the Holy Mass, or maybe you aren't able to continue on, this is us parting ways. God bless. Make it a joyful day. And we'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Eastern on Morning Joy, where truth matters. We'll see you.
This has been Morning Joy, where truth matters, hosted by Keith Downey. Take some joy with you today. Visit grnonline.com/joy to listen again, share a segment, or answer the question of the day. That's grnonline.com/joy.